Well, this just came as a big surprise to me, but I just had a heart attack.
This is a creative idea share that you can watch from there to help you be aware. You can even watch it in your underwear. A creative idea share.
So I'm not really gonna call this an idea share, but maybe more of just a share. By the way, I am filming this in a cemetery. I'm not trying to be morbid about this. It really is just a beautiful day, and this is where I like to go. This is a place I walk, and so I'm on a walk, and I just thought that I would maybe just do some recording here. So I'm a healthy guy. My doctor tells me that I'm healthy. I exercise, I eat right, or I thought that I was eating right. And so it was a real surprise to me. Well, let me back up. I started having some symptoms about a month ago. I started getting, not pain, I wouldn't call it pain, but maybe a little bit of pressure in my chest, but not even that bad. It would be like, if you're playing with a 3-year-old kid and they're sitting on your chest. It sort of felt like that. It was not alarming, but I remember making a mental note of it. I remember it happening in a music store. I remember I was working out at Planet Fitness, and I'd have it there. And then I would work out, and then it would go away. So I didn't maybe take it too seriously. Well, then one day and by the way, I'm directing a show at the time, and so I'm thinking, well, after the show, I will go and get a physical. I'll have the doctor tell me something about what I'm feeling. But in the meantime, I'm putting it off. But God has his own timeline for our lives. And so I was out hanging posters for this show that I'm directing, and I went to, just so happens that I was putting posters up at my church. And there I was in the social hall, and then I got one of these episodes, but this one was a little bigger than the others. And the big difference is that I felt faint. I felt like maybe I would pass out. The pressure was a little bit more, instead of it maybe being a 3-year-old kid sitting on my chest, and maybe it's now a 5-year-old kid sitting on my chest. And I did take my pulse, and it was a little wonky too. So, and it wasn't going away as quickly as the others. And so I called my wife, and I said, I don't know what a heart attack is or what it feels like, but I wonder if I'm having one. And she says, go into the office. And by the way, I didn't know the church secretaries very well. Yeah, I see them in church, but I don't know them very well. And so I go into the church office, and nothing is worse than going into a room and telling people I might be having a heart attack, because now they're pushing their chairs away, and they're saying, are you serious? And I say, I don't know, but maybe these are the symptoms. I'm not sure. So the church secretary drives me to the emergency room, and that's where my wife meets me. And so now I'm in the emergency room, and they're checking me out, and my vitals for the most part look good. My blood pressure looks good to them. My blood levels look good to them. I have the blood oxygen to the heart level looks good to them. They take an X-ray, it looks normal. And I've got doctors coming in, and they're saying to me, you're the guy that we don't really know what to do with. And you don't want to necessarily hear that. But then on the other hand, it's nice to know they're not finding anything too severe. But I want answers. For all I know, this could be a bad case of indigestion. I just don't know. And it's not, I'm mostly feeling fine. The episode that brought me into the emergency room went away by the time I got to the emergency room. So they're taking an EKG, and they're not finding anything too irregular. It's a little weird, but nothing that's alarming them. They did take blood, and there's an enzyme. I'm learning all this stuff now. There's an enzyme in your blood called troponin, and if your heart is under duress, it goes up. Now, if you have a massive, and mine did go up. Mine started at a 7, and then it went to 33. But that's not too alarming for them, because if somebody comes in with a massive coronary, they can see those levels go up to the thousands. And so, but it was enough for them to kind of say, okay, it might be the heart. There might, It's indicating something with the heart. And so they kept me all weekend, but there are no technicians there on the weekend. So I spent 28 hours in the emergency room, and then they found a bed for me, and then they're still checking my levels, and they want me to press the nurse button every time I get an episode. And sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't, because sometimes these just felt so mild, I didn't know if they even were episodes, you know? Just a little bit of pressure, never pain. I even had one of the healthcare professionals say, you know, my bet is they'll test you, they'll do an echocardiogram, and maybe they'll find nothing, and then they'll give you some protocol for indigestion or something, and send you home. Well, so I'm staying at the hospital the whole weekend. You know, thankfully they decided to keep me with very few symptoms, and so on Monday morning I pressed the button because I'm having a small episode. Not a big deal, but I thought I'd tell them about this. And so I pressed the button, and that's at 6 a.m. At 6:10, I had the second worst one. Not the worst one. If the one that brought me into the emergency room earlier on Friday was an 8, this one would be a 5. But then they started coming in regular succession, you know, and not even very badly. Just these little bouts of pressure. But it was enough for them to catch one on an EKG. And suddenly my hospital room is more and more people are coming in. It's not just my nurse now. Now it's doctors, and now it's more professionals. And so I said, okay, are they getting me ready for the echocardiogram? And they say, no, we're skipping that. We're taking you to the cath lab. So now I know something was caught. They found something. And they put me on a bed with rollers. And they bring me down to the catheter lab. This is where they do an angiogram. They can run basically a tube from your arm, and I got a little hole there. You can sort of see it. Can you see it? It's even really small. But they run a tube from your wrist to your heart, and then they've got an X-ray video machine, and they're kind of looking at your heart in real time. So they roll me down to the catheter lab, and and the lady says, as soon as we get through those double doors, it's going to seem like an Indy 500 pit stop, because you're going to have just a zillion people coming in. They're going to be all coming at you. So we go through those doors, and I don't know how many people there were, somewhere between 7 and 10. And she was right. They all have their job to do. They're all coming in, and they're putting me on a table, and there are 2 main technicians. I think one's like the cardiologist who's running the tube from my wrist to my heart, and the other guy must be a radiologist. I don't know, but they're talking. And one guy's kind of manning the X-ray, and they have you awake for this, and they give you fentanyl. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, because that's its own story. But now they're running, they give me a little bit of pain med right here on the wrist, put a hole in that artery, and run a tube through that artery all the way to your heart. And then I hear the one doctor go, "Oh," and the other doctor goes, "Yep." And then the one doctor who has a European accent, he goes, "Peter, we are going to give you a stent." And so they, right there on the table, inflated a little balloon in an artery called the left anterior descending artery, or the LAD artery. They have a nickname for this artery, and they call it the Widowmaker. This is not what I want to hear. I don't want this. I don't want to know that I've got a problem with my Widowmaker artery. But apparently it was 90% blocked. And if it's 100% blocked, you can't live. That's got to get fixed. And so mine was 90% blocked. And I will remind you, I had no pain, virtually no symptoms, and I wasn't even sure they were heart symptoms. So they put a stent in there. And then they bring me back to the room, and I'm on fentanyl, and I'm looking at my daughter and other people who are in the room, and nobody had a left eye. I was looking at people, and everything else was proportional. Their mouth was proportional, nose was proportional, their right eye was fine, but nobody had a left eye. And then I would look at them long enough just to make their left eye come back. And then I would look at somebody else's face, and they didn't have a left eye either. And I would just keep staring at them until I could make their eye come back. And I did it to my daughter. She goes, Dad, why are you looking at me? And I said, because I'm trying to make your eye come back. Well, I guess, they give you fentanyl and maybe some other drugs. After that wore off, it was all fine. I guess I'm just here to tell you, I'm 57 and I'm very active. As a matter of fact, a week before my heart attack, I was doing a magic show. I was on a unicycle. I was juggling torches. I was running around the audience. I was doing all the things. And I was having an episode right during that show. I remember that I made a note of it. I did the show and afterwards I felt fine. This is not the normal symptoms of a heart attack. Usually they say if you are exerting yourself, that makes your symptoms worse. That was not my experience. I was having a very different experience where if I exerted myself, I felt like I was making the symptoms go away. This is what made me not worry so much about this. If you would have told me the day I was doing that show that I would be having a heart attack in 5 days, I would have laughed. And here I am. I'm very grateful to God. It was a blessing from God that I was in the hospital when this second bout of symptoms came around. Because if I was at home, I wouldn't have probably come in. So here's my message. If you even think there might be a chance, go in. Go to the emergency room. Get it checked out. Because this can be a silent killer. This can be something that you just don't see coming, and you might not have big symptoms for it. But this has made me think very philosophically. God is good. Jesus is real. I was praying a lot for my family when I was there on the table. And I'm not afraid to go to heaven. If God wants to take me, then if I'll be in glory, that's fine for me. But I was praying for my family, and as part of that prayer, I started realizing, God, if it's your will to keep me here, please keep me here for my family, because I know it would put them in a lot of hardship. And so God has great grace and has kept me here to live a longer life. I'm educating myself now about heart disease. I'm learning a lot that genetics are a huge component to this, because my grandfather died in his 50s from a heart attack. My grandmother died in her 70s from a heart attack in her sleep. My mom had heart disease almost my entire memory of her. And my brother had a heart attack about 5 years ago. And so genetics is a giant component of this. And so I wanted to just give you an update. My plan is to be posting more YouTube videos here coming up soon. And I know I've taken quite a hiatus here, but anyways, this is a life changer. My content isn't going to be about my heart, don't worry. It's going to be back to creative stuff. But I just wanted to let people know that they should get this checked out. You can get a heart attack and almost be feeling fine. Really, that's the truth. If you just have any inkling that you might be going through an episode, the one episode that I had that brought me to the emergency room was the only one that sort of felt dangerous. And that's simply because I felt like I would pass out. If you have symptoms like that, go in. Anyways, you guys, I just wanted to tell you this story and let you know that I'm fine. I'm gonna be getting back on YouTube here again, and I hope you're all doing well. God bless. We'll talk to you later.